Welcome to Prime Suspects, alongside a clean-shaven Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr. I'm your host, Matt Landis. Adam, 2 weeks ago, we led off by discussing Wimbledon. Now that it's in the books, how did the tournament go for Prime Sports and BetChris during an otherwise slow stretch on the sports betting calendar?
We had decent results. I mean, it was very chalky, Wimbledon, especially the second half. I mean, the live betting was really good volume, a few good upsets in there as well. So, but it was very chalky, which our players aren't chalky players. So it ended up being a decent couple of weeks on the tennis. And again, volume was good. Prime Sports does have the live streaming and that. So, hopefully that helped a little bit. But all in all, another, Wimbledon and sort of summer tennis in the bag, and looking forward to the US Open next.
And 2 weeks ago, you also spoke to Prime's imminent launch in Kentucky. So not to put the cart before the horse, pun intended, when we're talking Churchill Downs, what other states, if any, are you exploring to potentially capitalize on declining market entry fees?
So as for Kentucky, that will be going live on Monday, July 28th. So that's all ready to go there. Everything's in order. So that's ready to launch and open up. For me, it's kind of getting these states right. We've actually had some calls from market access holders that are actually almost wanting to pay us to take their market access off them. Gone are the expectations of these big fees, minimum guarantees, and the percentage rates, all that sort of, gone to hell, gone down, because even, Pennsylvania and a few of those with operators that are looking to get out are also trying to potentially offload some of their market accesses with incentives that they'll cover, certain amounts of those agreements along the way as well. So as for the particular states they're looking at, there's nothing that jumps out. Colorado's an easy one that could be done, but, do we want to sort of go that direction? Michigan's one, obviously, that I've got some interest in. There is some sports skins, I think. I think the casino ones are all sort of tied up at this point. There's still some sort of high license fees, and the fear is the taxes. I mean, just every time you go into a new state, they seem to raise the taxes. So, with no guarantees that that's not going to be the case going forward, and all these other, avenues, being a market maker and all these other things that are, possibilities, it's really hard to want to take too many leaps into it. But we have a strategy, and again, slow and easy, build out what we have, and, if we had some gasoline to throw on the fire, we'd definitely jump forward into a few things. But right now, it's just take our time, build what we have, build a bit of brand awareness, and just try and break square. That's the first goal.
And Joe, at this point, let's bring you into the fold and stick with Kentucky in a sense, because last week you were in the Bluegrass State for the summer meeting of the National Council of Legislators from Gaming States, also known as NCLGS, where sentiment from Twitter suggests some contentious discussions took place. How would you sum up what drove you to attend, the main issues and perspectives you observed, and your top takeaways from the experience?
I think the main thing that had me attending was that our old friend Joe Tall, who's now the head of government relations practice over at GLI, invited me to be part of his panel, which was interestingly titled "The Honeymoon is Over for Sports Betting." And so it was really to talk more about the fact that I mentioned the great quote by John Wooden, the Hall of Fame coach from UCLA, which is, be quick, but don't hurry. And all of the states right now are trying to find ways to plug their financial holes, and they need to do it quickly, but they're hurrying a lot, and they're doing it in a kind of haphazard way that's going to have knock-on effects that are going to be probably negative. You add to that just what happened the week before between New Jersey and the federal government, all of those pieces. And it was really to kind of start pushing back in front of that audience to say, look, it's probably a good time for the industry and for government to take a fundamental reset. We're eight years into this post-PASPA, and that's probably long enough to take a sit down and say, all right, what do we need to do? What do we want out of this? And where are we going to go next? And it's also to try and get them to look at sports betting, to talk about looking at sports betting as more than just an ATM machine. I can't fault them because it was largely sold to them after the initial burst of PASPA, particularly by the Fan Kings and the casino guys, as a tax generator. So why would the lawmakers think of it as anything but that when that's what they were sold on? But because of that, industry's kind of painted itself into a corner, and we have to really change the discussion and change the thinking about that so that we can make it sustainable. All you have to do is look later in the conference when some of the alternative models started popping up their head. Apparently, Kalshi has really decided to lean into being the black hat on this one with the comments that they were making that didn't seem like they were really good compliance and integrity comments when I'm paraphrasing here now, but when their representative said, like, if somebody loses their shirt, well, who cares? It's on them. To which then the chairman of Massachusetts Gaming responded, who cares? I fucking care. And that was him saying it, not me. So I'm sure Kalshi feels really confident, maybe a little overconfident in that venue because it's state regulators and state legislators, and they probably think, why are we even at this clam bake? We're a federally licensed, permitted operation. Maybe they felt that they were doing everybody a favor by even showing up. The other piece was, the answer to everything, like the taxes, was, oh, well, then why don't you start online casino? You don't think you're getting enough out of sports? Well, really what you need is online casino. Now, again, full disclosure, I can't throw any stones in that department. I legalized online casino in New Jersey before I did sports betting, all the way back in 2013. Don't know why it's so hard for you guys. I did it way back when. But anyway, it was kind of contentious, but I think that just kind of shows you that there's a lot of anxiety on the behalf of all parties, all sides on this one, whether you're an operator or you're a lawmaker or a regulator, that we're in a really interesting time here in this industry. And while nothing got solved, it was just a conference. Hopefully it does spur some further discussion and some further engagement. And by the way, did you know that they have bourbon in Kentucky? It was amazing. I was not aware of it until I went through the airport, where literally every ad on the wall and every other shop on the concourse was dedicated to bourbon. So the things you find out when you travel.
Well, from some interesting times in the worlds of legislators and regulators to interesting times for influencers, the New York Times on Sunday published a feature article about Mazi with the headline, "He claims he's the sports betting king. What are the odds?" Joe, you're quoted several times in this piece, including the line that you'll be the first one to say you're stunned at just how quickly sports betting turned into sports media and entertainment. Given that Mazi is getting the New York Times treatment, it seems fair to say sports betting creators are increasingly making themselves the main characters, with Elf's Twitter Spaces being a fertile ground for these people, or so I'm told, and that the culture for sports betting is shifting more toward entertainment. So from your perspective, how much of a positive or negative is this for the industry? And how does this culture shift potentially affect sustainability?
Well, specifically when it comes to Mazi, how does it affect him? Well, he's currently cooling his heels and other parts of his body in the Clark County Jail on 14 counts of identity fraud. So it's funny. I said it in the article, old wine, new bottle. These guys, they just recycle themselves. And these guys they're just personalities. Mazi and most of these guys who are like TikTok handicappers who are out there flaunting their wealth, things like that. That's all they're doing is they're selling the lifestyle. They're a marketing machine. You got to hand it to them. They really find a way to squeeze the sponge of, low involvement, but highly moneyed bettors out there. And they just wring a shitload of money out of these guys. But now, it's even more so because, social media, it's so easy to go from 0 to 500,000 viewers on TikTok or Instagram or something like that. If you have a plan, and you got to say his plan was a pretty interesting plan. It seemed to work for him all the way up until he started using Romanian passports to place bets at casinos. It's actually, all kidding aside, it's kind of fucking disgraceful at how easy it is for these guys to set up and for people just hand their money over to him. Adam says time and time again, and I know he loves saying it because he knows it partially tweaks me, is that Americans just want the answer. They just want to know who to bet on. And I don't know, is there anybody on the planet that says like, no, don't give me the answer, I'd rather do the hard work? Maybe it's different in Australia. I didn't grow up there, right? But it is really easy for these guys to just tap into that. And, the fact that they're selling these lifestyles, anybody, and I know they quoted, a few other people like our good friend Spanky, anybody who knows how to read the Matrix can see just how fucking ridiculous it is that Mazi has this reputation just in the images that he presents. He's got bet slips for like $1 million from Circa. You see him stacking up money on the counter. Like, there's no way that guy gets that action if he's got an edge whatsoever. Nobody respects him. And I really love the way they started out that article. Yeah, Mazi, he's a hell of a handicapper. What did he do? He had a 3-team parlay on 3 overwhelming money line favorites of the NFL. Oh my God, that's some serious handicapping. Come at me with and it's funny, like the number of guys that you see in this TikTok trade where they're like, oh yeah, I've got, I'm the bookie killer. Look at my picks tonight. And then they're picking friggin' money line favorites that are minus 200 or deeper on that thing. And like, are you kidding me? Adam, those would qualify as bridge jumpers in your book, wouldn't they? But yeah, it's kind of disgusting how this has turned into entertainment in a way. But those guys, I mean, Mazi's making more money than me this year, I guess, although right now he can't spend it in the Clark County jail.
Adam, I'm guessing you'll have a lot of alignment with Joe's sentiment, but we'll see if we can tease out anything fresh as well. As somebody who's spent about 3 decades betting around the world, you've seen the tout and handicapper spaces evolve just about everywhere. So how do you size up what you're seeing in the US right now in terms of this being old wine in a new bottle, to borrow Joe's line, just with smartphones and social media these days, or of this possibly being a new era for the tout game?
Yeah, I mean, we had little bits and pieces of this in the horse race tracks back in Australia growing up and things like that, but nothing like in the US. When I came across here, God, it's 25 years ago, and started to hear about, and being down in Jamaica and then Curacao, some of the sports books had tout services. And again, they would get 1,000 people sign up, 500 would get this team, 500 would get that team, guaranteed 500 winners. And then you'd split it up to 250 the following week and go, all the way down to the end. And then you'd start it up again. You'd have more going through it. I mean, it was clear that this was just loud American salesmen sort of just trying to sell shit, and people were buying it. People were just, to have a winning bet is just such a, a big factor on a Sunday afternoon. And they think by asking someone else for what that winning bet is, and then placing it and then happening to be on the right side, that they accomplish something. It's an area of the industry that I've struggled with for many, many years. I see the point in what people are out there doing. There is some good stuff where it is good information and whatnot. One of the things that I go to and read constantly and probably daily is sportinglife.com, which is out of the UK, which again, good write-ups, good information, has bets and selections and things like that. But it's the information and it's what they're producing all in. When you just get Twitter and whatever else, TikTok, and they just say, bet this, bet that, and there's your 3 picks for the Saturday college football. Okay, well, why? But there's a lot of people making a lot of money off these things because there's a lot of people willing to just lay out the money and hope they get it back betting. But yeah, it's definitely an area I've struggled with. I've kind of sort of lent into it a bit more recently with the stuff I've been doing on X and things like that, is to try and, again, deliver data, deliver information. And we've even taken some of those TikToks and potentially cut them up and said, the bookie busters coming in, and then they give these shit prices, shit odds, or things that never existed, and sort of replying to those things, whatnot in the works. But yeah, it's just one part of the industry that seems so on steroids in the US, and people just chasing it, that really doesn't exist around the world. Yes, horse tracks, things like that, it's not never existed. There is, a lot of people putting out their Saturday papers and that with their tips on the horses and best bets of the days and nap of the days and all these kind of things. But the way it is on the US, on sports, and the way that they're, out there selling it is it's quite something. So, you got to respect some of these people could sell ice to the Eskimos, but yeah, I'm not in my forte. So,
Well, shifting gears from touts to outs, Front Office Sports reported yesterday that DraftKings is in talks to buy a prediction market startup called Railbird. Adam, prediction markets obviously don't have a diverse range of product options compared to sportsbooks. No parlays, minimal prop and live betting offerings, and so on. So if DraftKings does enter the prediction market game, do you think they'll attempt to put the sportsbook stamp on the prediction market experience with a more diversified product mix, or will they keep a clean separation between the two verticals?
I imagine they'll keep a clean separation of verticals. For who they are, this is a great thing to do. This is a great buy to go in and try and capture some of this liquidity as well. They have a database, massive database, and they have a federal database from their fantasy days. So now that they can push those into that, what are the regulators and all those, the other aspects of it going to think? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know what they're thinking these days with some of the decisions they're making, some of the moves that are being made. But for me, I think it's a good move for DraftKings. This isn't going away. The more you read, the more information comes out. It seems like the sweeps they'll go after, the CFTC stuff doesn't seem like they have the strength or the power to go after it at this point. So I would think they should be smart and not put them together. There is more space in the exchange world to do same game parlays, yes, nos, all these different things that you can widen it up. But I tell you what, I've been looking at that Kalshi the last few weeks since being up in Michigan again. And I mean, they're doing some liquidity. There's some volume on that stuff that I would love to have in our sports books. So they're in the gaming space, DraftKings, they're in the fantasy space, they're in the horses, they're in everything. This is just another vertical. So I think it's the only move for them at the moment. But again, I don't know what the fallout is with the states, the regulators, and how they look at it. I wish they just all get together. States, can do what they do. Feds do what they do. There's enough there to go around. Just stop fucking raising the taxes on sports betting, because there's no way the states can compete with the federal exchanges if they keep doing that.
And understanding your caveat that you're not privy to the inner workings within the walls of DraftKings, if you were Jason Robbins, how would you approach managing both the sportsbook and prediction market verticals?
You just put it up and you take bets. I mean, they don't take all the bets they should be with DraftKings as a sports book. That's the first thing I'd do is take off, guardrails, let people bet. I mean, he could double their volume fairly quickly and not really hurt their bottom line. In fact, increase it, get better information. Now you can take that product that you have, go plug it into an exchange or a prediction market. It's all there. They have the whole ecosystem. It just, if they could work out how to maximize what they have and really, I guess, step into the risk management side of the business, then the rest of us don't have a chance in hell. So they're really, I think, I don't know what the word is, de-optimizing everything that they have, all the databases, all the money, everything else. There's just so much they could do with this. And if they get the green light and don't have any pushback from the state regulators, legislators, whoever that falls on, it's a no-brainer to go that path.
And Joe, news of this potential deal comes just days after FanDuel was valued at $31 billion following Boyd's divestiture of its ownership, as reported by Ingame.com, while DraftKings market cap sits at about $21 billion. So how much can DraftKings' potentially aggressive push into prediction markets drive immediate growth to close that gap between their valuation and FanDuel's?
Well, since their valuation is based entirely on a popularity contest, which is the share sales right now in the public markets, versus is this really a good business or not? I mean, one of the things about prediction markets and exchanges that we're not talking about is Kalshi is not entirely, it's not just like, people just betting against each other freely and covering each other's bets. We know there's a lot of inside baseball going on behind that model, and it's not necessarily something that can be replicated very easily across other companies just by adding prediction markets, right? So there's a lot more to it than that. But, right now it seems to have the commanding narrative, doesn't it? Otherwise, why would the Kalshi guy go to Louisville and basically, show up a bunch of state legislators and regulators if they didn't feel like they had the commanding heights in the industry here right now? Anybody who gets into that market right now will absolutely be rewarded by the public markets because it has all the sensation. And Kalshi, gosh, they just keep putting out these magnificent ads on television, the little engine that could, the underdogs, all this other horse shit about Kalshi, about how they overcame and whatever. No, I mean, they found themselves a nice little loophole in the market. Tarek went to the right cocktail party and met a member of the family of the ruling family of America here right now. And then they hired all the right people. So they didn't have a legal strategy. They had a hiring strategy. It's worked out really well for them right now. And so far, like, it doesn't seem like the states are pushing back very much, but you have New Jersey and Nevada. They're pursuing it in the courts. And more than likely what you're going to see is if anybody challenges it, it's going to be those two states, and everybody's just going to free ride on them. They'll say like, well, we support you and we hope you do really well, but we're not going to shell out the millions of dollars like that New Jersey shelled out in order to get Ted Olson to go and pursue their legal strategy through the federal courts. So more than likely that's what's going to happen. In the meantime, they'll punch up on the sweepstakes guys and just irritate everybody on the planet about that one. But I do agree with Adam, as I said before. This is a great time for everybody to sit back and kind of reassess like where we are right now and really what's the optimal way forward. A company like DraftKings, yeah, you go all the way back like from their DFS days, between them and FanDuel. Why did they win this battle? Why are they the Leviathans that they are right now? Just one simple thing. It's their database from when they're in DFS. Day one, they had people on deposit in their databases, and they just had to flip a switch. So that doesn't mean that there aren't other companies that can do the same. They just haven't pushed into the market yet.
And to take us home, Joe, how would you describe your bear case and bull case for DraftKings entering the prediction market space?
First of all, interesting name, Railbird Exchange, especially for the gaming space, if people know what that word is actually a reference to. I mean, I imagine what they'll do is they'll buy it. There'll be quite a bit of a claim. They'll throw a bunch of money at it. And hopefully they find a couple of people to really run that thing the right way. I looked at Railbird's lineup of people there. There's nobody that knows sports. Their founders are basically, they're practically children. But congratulations to them at being in the right place at the right time. But they're going to need to make a huge investment into that place because, as I mentioned before, alluded to before, Kalshi isn't all that it seems. It's not just Tarek and his plucky group of, underdogs up there in Manhattan. There's some pretty significant resources that are very sports oriented that are behind that. DraftKings is going to have to be able to match that or exceed that, actually. And what they might have in an advantage there is that they're just better marketers. They have a deeper database, and they've been doing sports gaming longer than Kalshi has. That big powerhouse that sits behind Kalshi making their markets and providing liquidity, that's great when it comes to executing on product. But when it comes to marketing, consumer awareness, and already having a deep database of deposited players, it's going to be tough to beat DraftKings unless you're FanDuel.
On that note, we will go ahead and wrap up for this week. To the audience, we appreciate you being railbirds as far as this conversation is concerned. And however bearish or bullish you're feeling about the sports betting space, from sportsbooks and prediction markets to influencers and legislators, we here at Prime Suspects are always bullish on you. So thanks as always for tuning in, and we'll catch you again next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.